Hello. Sorry, just doing a little mic check there. But yeah, I'll be getting started in just a minute. Just figured I'd kick the actual stream off a little earlier and then get started at 3. But I'm here, and if you're in chat, feel more than welcome to send any messages. All right. We are live. I can't hear myself. There we go. Just needed to adjust my monitor a little bit there. All right. Happy Sunday to you all. Welcome back to another episode of the Sunday live stream. It is September 26th, episode number 10. We've now been doing this for 10 times. I forget how many weeks it is, though. It's been a little bit longer than 10 weeks. Had a few weeks off here and there. But let me rearrange some windows here for a second. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started. One thing I would just ask you guys or ladies, if you enjoy the Sunday live streams or if you enjoy the content on my channel, the number one way that you can support me and say thank you to me is just by subscribing to the channel and liking this video. That would mean so much to me. And that's really the best metrics and the best way that I can kind of grow this channel. So, yeah, if you like the channel, please subscribe and like the video. That's all I ask. So I know, like I said, I've been okay, sorry, thought I had some audio issue here for a second. I know I've been cutting up some of these clips and putting them on YouTube over the past few weeks, but I have wanted to get back to actually making just standalone YouTube videos like I used to. And it's taken me a little bit to get there. I started with the Sunday live streams just to kind of get back into the flow of things, but I officially have my first YouTube video back up on my channel. And honestly, this is probably one of my favorite videos I think I've ever done. Unfortunately, the views are not where I want them to be yet. But this is the one, Becoming Neo, the next revolution. Yeah, it is one of my favorite videos I've ever done. It's on a subject that I think is very interesting and is going to lead to quite a weird world. And just to summarize for you guys here, it is really just about what I believe the future is going to look like with regards to brain to brain interfaces. I briefly touch on brain to computer interfaces in the beginning, really referencing the technology Neuralink, which Elon Musk is working on. And honestly, that alone is kind of mind blowing. I think I've shown you guys the video before, but the monkey controlling a computer with his thoughts. He has like this little joystick that he's messing around with, but really it's his thoughts that are controlling the computer. And that alone is going to be crazy. I think there are going to be some insane applications there. But when I really start thinking long term, brain to brain interfaces are something that I think are really going to completely change the world forever. Not only in our ability to communicate, but more specifically, which is what the video is about, is the next revolution. Because I believe there is going to be a complete explosion in human potential. There's going to be a complete explosion in human abilities. You know, somebody today can be proficient in like 3 or 4 things, and we're like, oh my God, how'd you find the time? Like, you're so good at so many things. Somebody might be good at a musical instrument, they might be good at painting, they might be good at, I don't know, running. Like, they might be a competitive runner, and they have all these different things that they're very proficient in. And I think that when we get to brain interfaces, that is going to not only become more common, but rather than, 3 or 4 things being very impressive, it's going to be like 10 things or 15 things. Who knows? But the point is that I think when brain to brain interfaces become a thing, there is just going to be a gigantic explosion in human potential. And I reference it in the video, but Renaissance men, if you look back at like Leonardo da Vinci, I think people like him are going to be way more common. Whereas now we kind of look back on that, we're like, okay, that's the exception. He was an outlier, and he might have been in a lot of ways. But going forward, I think people like that are going to become more and more common. So, yeah, that's what the video is about. If you want to check it out, feel free to do so. I would highly recommend it. Like I said, it is probably one of my, if not the favorite video I've done to date. I think the only other one that would maybe kind of win me over would be this video that I did, The Future of Education. Oh my God, that was already 3 years ago. Wow. Wow. 3 years ago. That's crazy. But yeah, it would be between those two. I think those two are two of the favorite videos that I've done. And I'm not mad at this little ratio here. 21-1. I can live with that. But yeah, that and Becoming Neo, The Next Revolution. Those are the 2 videos I'm really proud of. Also, I don't know if I mentioned it last week, but no, because I published this video this week. Yeah, 4 days ago. But if you guys are interested in fitness, calisthenics, bodyweight fitness, I've also started another channel, already up to 14 subscribers. Not mad at that. And I just released my first video on that channel. So yeah, that is also available to you if that is something you are interested in. But let's go ahead and get into today's big subject. I'm going to be a little vague on details here just because of the subject matter, and I want to preserve anonymity as much as possible. But somebody, let me kick back a little bit here. Somebody close to me in my life, we'll call them a friend, recently started working a new job, and they haven't been at this job for very long, like just over 2 months, like still very new into it. But basically, over the course of working at this job, a bunch of new responsibilities have been thrown their way. They've been kicking ass at the job. They've basically like restructured the entire team. They've essentially done a lot of work in this 2 months. And they got to a point to where they're like, I think I should be getting paid more for what I'm doing. When they brought me on, I wasn't really in this industry. I changed in industries, so, I couldn't really negotiate salary too much. I was just trying to mix things up. But now that I've been here for 2 months and they've really seen what I'm capable of, they've seen what I've done to the team, what I've done to team morale. They told me basically everything about their time at the company. They're like, I think I'm in a position where I can negotiate a raise. So they told me everything and basically said, I'm going to ask for a raise. This is the first time I've ever asked for a raise, so I'm very nervous about it, but I want to know your thoughts. And they told me all of those things. Like, I was brought on to be a manager of this team, found a lot of waste within the team, found somebody that wasn't pulling their weight who was previously managing the team, restructured it all, added in processes. The people that they're managing over are like super happy. The executives at the company are really happy. Basically, everything that could be going right is going right. So they're like, I think I'm going to ask for a raise. And I'm like, okay. And they told me how much they were going to ask for. And with all of that knowledge, I basically told them that is not the raise you should be asking for. So let's say, once again, I kind of want to be vague with some of these details because I don't want to expose anybody that doesn't want to be exposed, especially when it concerns their work and their salary. But we'll just use nice, even numbers. Let's say they're making $100,000 a year, right? And they're like, I think I'm going to ask for 120. I told them, you should ask for double that. They were going to ask for 120. I said, you should double what you're going to ask for. And they're like, what? Are you crazy? I can't ask for double that. That's like, I already feel bad enough asking for a $20,000 raise on top of the 100 that I was making. And you're telling me to ask for 40,000? Like, that's a lot. I don't feel comfortable with that. So I basically threw everything that they told me back at them. I'm like, look, you've told me all this stuff. I think you're worth it. And the first thing I asked them was like, hey, calculate that out. Let's say, like, your take home pay right now. Calculate that raise, find out how much your paychecks are going to be with that raise. And they did it. And I'm like, okay, it's not that much, right? And they're like, yeah, like, I'm like, it's not so substantial that you're actually going to notice this. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, so that's the first problem. You're asking for a raise. And if you get the raise, like, sure, you're obviously going to notice it when you see that direct deposit hit. But it's not so much that you're like, oh, things have kind of changed. It's just a little bit more money each paycheck. So I was like, now double what you're going to ask for and run those numbers. They ran those numbers and they're like, okay, that looks nice. I like the numbers that I'm seeing there. And it basically came out to, if they were to get that raise, that they were essentially going to be getting, I think, like another month's worth of income per month. So every month, their take-home pay is essentially another month's rent, right? Significant. You're going to notice that. If it's just a little bit of cash here and there, like, oh, I got another $200 this paycheck, like, what are you really going to do with that? But if you're getting a raise and your take-home pay is literally rent, that is a substantial increase in your income. And allow me to go on a little rant here because, I've talked about this before, but I think it's worth addressing. If you get a raise like that where you're getting rent, another month's rent every month, if you don't upgrade your lifestyle, if you don't go out and immediately like buy a car or just start spending money on clothes or just things that are nice to have, if you actually put that away, if you have 6 months, let's say you work there for another 6-9 months, and you put all of that cash away into your bank account, you didn't touch it. If you quit, you have 6 to 9 months of runway to figure out what your next job is going to be, to work on some project so that you can avoid working entirely. That's 6 to 9 months of runway when most people are living paycheck to paycheck. So when you get a big raise like this, you should kind of think in those terms. Like, okay, do I really need to buy some things? I mean, you're obviously okay with where you're at right now. You're making ends meet. So take that extra rent, put it to the side so that you have the runway in the event that something happens. Maybe you get fired. Okay, let me try doing my own thing. Let me try freelancing. I have 6 to 9 months to play with. Half a year to 3/4 of a year to play with to try and figure out freelancing, right? Or let's say you try negotiating another raise later, and normally you would be like panicking because you're like, oh my God, if I don't get this, then I want to walk away, but I don't have a lot of cash lying around. You're way more comfortable in negotiating when you're like, I have 9 months to play with. I'm good. So end of that rant. But I told her, okay, I gave that part away. I told them they go by them. That's their pronoun. I told them, I understand your hesitation to ask for this raise, especially when you came up with your number. You're like, this is how much more I would want to get paid. Excuse the green screen hiding my hand. You're like, this is how much more I want to get paid, and I just told you to double it. I get your hesitation. But I was like, ask yourself this question, and this gets to the when to negotiate a raise. Because I think a lot of people get this wrong. A lot of people negotiate a raise at some arbitrary point in time. They're like, I've been at this company for a year now. I guess I'll ask for a raise. And then they go into their manager or whoever it is that decides this. They're like, hey, I want to talk about a raise. And they're like, okay, why do you deserve a raise? Well, I've been here for a year. I've been loyal. I think I've put in some good work. I think I deserve a raise. It's like time is your selling point. That's what you think is worthy of a raise. That raise that you get at a year, that's just to account for inflation. The company just does that automatically. Don't use an arbitrary point in time to determine when you're going to ask for a raise. Waiting at a year, I mean, I'm not going to say you're never going to get it. You might. But to just set this arbitrary point in time and be like, I've been here for a year, I want to talk about a raise. Like, don't do that. Like I said, this person asked for it after 2 months. That's 5 times 4, 20, 40 days, really, of work days. when you should ask for a raise, and I think there are two big moments that I can think of that are worth asking for a raise. There are others. If you can think of them, leave a comment below. Let me know. But when I just think about the two where I'm like, you're pretty solid in making your case. Number one, when you're indispensable. Number one would be, and I told this person to ask themselves this question. I said, ask yourself, if you went in tomorrow to work and you told them, hey, I got another job, I'm done. You told them that you were quitting, whatever the reason is. I'm like, are they cool with that or are they panicking? Are they accepting the fact that you're moving on? They're just like, okay, well, it's been nice. Or are they freaking out and they're like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And that person was like, yeah, they'd be freaking out. They would definitely be freaking out. I know I've only been here for 2 months, but if I left tomorrow, it would be a company-wide discussion. Whether, like, how do we get this person to stay? Or if I already left and I was like, there's no way you can keep me, they're like, we got to do something. Like, because now this person is gone, our team is kind of fucked. So that was the first thing. I was like, you're in a good spot there. If you are in a position, and they know it, where if you walk out the door tomorrow, somebody in the company, the rest of their day is literally solving that problem, and the problem is you aren't working there anymore, you're in a good spot to ask for a raise. So that's the first time, the first milestone, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Just ask yourself that question every once in a while at work. If I walked out today, is my manager, is my team, is the company, if you're at a really big company, obviously you can't speak in company terms. You might need to speak in department terms or team terms. But if I left the company today, is my team freaking out? Is my department like, fuck, we just lost that person? If the answer to that question is yes, it might be worth considering having a raise conversation. If the answer is no, you're dispensable. Nobody cares, right? So ask yourself that question. The second time that I think you should really consider asking for a raise is when you gain new responsibilities. If you've been working at a company for a while, and I don't know, let's use software development because that's the world that I'm in. I get hired on to be a software developer. I'm doing my day-to-day work. I'm, doing this and that. And then let's say something else comes about. We hire a junior developer. They're like, hey, do you want to shadow or mentor this person? Let them shadow you, get them onboarded. And it's not just like a day's worth of work, but like, hey, you're probably going to have to mentor this person for like the next couple of months. Or like you lose a designer. They come to me and they're like, hey, we know you're a software developer, but we need somebody to kind of fill in this designer gap. Are you cool with doing that work? If your job now has new responsibilities, that is the second time to really consider asking for a raise. Because one, your actual job changed. But two, odds are that you're not like removing work. They're not like, okay, now you're only going to do 6 hours of software development and 2 hours of mentoring, or 6 hours of software development and 2 hours of design. Odds are they're going to kind of expect that you're doing the job you were doing plus the new stuff that you're doing. So that's the second time to ask for a raise. You literally have changed your job. And I'll get to how to kind of present this information in a bit. But going back to the example of the person I was talking to, they fit both requirements. They were both indispensable, which they themselves acknowledge. I asked them directly, if you leave today, is your team freaking out that you're gone? She was like, yeah. Definitely. 100%. I know they're panicking. And in that 2 months, they got new responsibilities. I'm like, congratulations. You are in a prime spot to ask for a raise. And not only that, I think you're going to get it. Companies seem financially healthy. Not a lot of people work at the company. So I'm like, honestly, I think you're good. And this is why you should double what you're asking for. You're in a position where you have leverage. The initial raise you were going to ask for, when we did the numbers, you wouldn't even notice. You yourself said, like, yeah, technically you compare the fucking direct deposits, you're going to notice. But it was a small enough number to where you're like, this doesn't significantly change my life. But when we doubled that number and you ran those numbers, you were like, oh, every month I'm getting another rent deposited to my bank account. That you notice, and that you can actually like quantify in some terms. Because if it's like $200 a month, you're like, okay, yeah, that's nice to have. But if you're getting rent a month, an additional rent's worth of pay a month, that's significant. So I was like, that's why you should double it. Because this is essentially a rounding error to them. In the grand scheme of things, your raise is a rounding error to them. But to you making an additional rent a month, that's a pretty big change in lifestyle. You can either, if you really want to just be dumb, you can spend that money. You now have rent's worth of disposable income to spend on whatever you want. You can buy clothes, shoes, whatever you want. Or you can save that money. And let's say you work at the company for another 6 months, 9 months, a year. You now have 6 months to a year's worth of runway to play with. That is a game changer. It's a hard thing to do. That's why most Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. And you can say, well, not everybody's as privileged as you are to be in software development, you asshole. Like, but even software developers, even people, like I saw this story the other day, millennials who are making 6 figures, it's like 70% of them are living paycheck to paycheck. People are just bad with money. So I was like, double it. You're going to notice this. This is going to be big. Now, how do you negotiate that raise? That's a big question. The first thing is going to the whole indispensable thing, addressing those facts, like straight up. Just bringing that information to them, which they did. They didn't, say it in those terms. Like, by the way, I'm indispensable. If I left tomorrow, you guys are fucked and you know it. They didn't say it like that. But they're like, look, I've only been here for 2 months. I've done this, I've restructured this team, I've exposed this waste that previously existed in this team, I've saved this amount of man hours, I've aligned these 2 teams in ways that didn't exist because the previous management couldn't do it. These were all problems you and other executives have talked to me about that I have now fixed, and everybody's on board. And more importantly, the people that I'm managing are actually excited about working. And that person did have references. I even told them, I'm like, assume hypothetically you have this whole conversation with the executive, and then once the call's over, he talks to the members of your team and he asks them like, hey, what do you think of this manager, this new manager we got? Like, are you on board with what they're doing? And they were like, yeah, they're totally going to have my back, and be like, they're kicking ass. I totally love the direction this team is going. So I'm like, you're good. And then the second part of that, gaining new responsibilities. They did gain new responsibilities. I'm like, use that. Bring that to them. And tell them straight up. Like, when I was presented this job offer 2 months ago, when I was interviewing, I was presented with X, Y, and Z job responsibilities. Now I have X, Y, Z, and A and B. Had I known that back then, I wouldn't have accepted this job for my current pay. That's a lot of work. I would have asked for more money. So they were in prime position to asking for a raise. Cover them again briefly. When you're indispensable, when the company's screwed without you, at least short term, where they're panicking and they need to address you not being there anymore, and you gaining new responsibilities. And then the how to negotiate that was, one, to give all the reasons why you're indispensable, because you've changed all these things, you've gotten things in line, everybody's on board, the people you're managing now like you more than their previous manager, they're excited about working with you. And then also you just saying, like, look, I've got new responsibilities, and back then, if I knew I was going to be doing all this, I would have asked for more. But I didn't ask for as much because I didn't think it was worth that much. So that's where they were at. And they were still a little hesitant to double what they were asking for. I made my case. I told them, your number's too low. If you ask for that raise, I can assure you, you're going to get it. But then you're going to think, what if? What if I'd asked for more? And I said, if you double it, you might not get it. I'm like, I think you will get it. I'm actually pretty positive you're going to get it, if everything you've told me is true. But I was like, the worst that happens, not the worst, they could just say no outright. Nope, we're not giving you any raise. And we'll get to what should happen in that scenario. But I was like, the second worst thing that might happen is they say no, but we'll meet you somewhere in the middle. A counter offer of sorts, right? And I said, if that happens, they might go down to your original number. And then you won't really be too mad because that was originally what you were going to ask for. Or they counter, you can counter back to meet somewhere in the middle between your original offer and the double. Or they actually counter and they meet you in the middle. They're like, that's a little too high, but we'll cut it down a little bit. And then you're still not doubling, but you're still like 1.5 or 1.7 from where you were. Still higher than your original ask. Took them a bit of convincing, and I even told them, I'm like, look, if you're nervous, this is normal. This is why people don't ask for raises. This is why people wait for the company to give them a raise. They're like, well, it's January 1st again. Inflation went up 3%. Here's your 3% raise. And then they're just like, okay, thanks. I was like, most people do that. I was like, what you're doing is abnormal. People don't do it, especially when they're shooting high. But they did it. They went with my number. They doubled the number that they were going to ask for. And guess what? They fucking got it. They got it. They were freaking out. Not only did they get it, it was like a snap yes. There wasn't even a discussion. There wasn't even a, well, thank you for making your case. I'll think about this and get back to you in an email later on next week. None of that. On the call. They got it. I'm like, imagine how you would feel if you went with your original number. You doubled it and you got it. And this is a significant jump in pay for them. As I've mentioned numerous times now, another month's rent every month. Crazy. But here's where people mess up. Most people I've advised on asking for raises, negotiating raises, like moving on from their current company because they're underpaid, if they listen to me, which not everybody does, but if they listen to me, they've turned things around. They've actually gotten to a better situation. But one time, a guy asked me for advice, and he did not listen to me. Because I told him, I was like, look, if you're going to go in and ask for a raise, you have to be prepared to walk away. If they counter and you're still happy with that number, that's one thing, right? Again, let's use $100,000 as an example. That's your base salary. Let's say you go in and you ask for 120, and they're like, oh, we can't do 120, but we can do 112. A little more than halfway. If you're like, okay, that works, I'll do that. That's fine. You can have that discussion and still save face because you got a raise, you negotiated, it's all good. But what this person did, which is the worst mistake you can ever make, and you will forever never have their respect. You'll have no voice within the company. They'll never take any discussion of a raise seriously ever again. He went into his manager's office, asked for a raise. I don't think he had good reason to. He wasn't indispensable, didn't gain new responsibilities. They just wanted money. Went into the office, asked for a raise. I don't know how the discussion went. I didn't get into too many details about that because I was so fucking irritated with how they handled it. But he asked for a raise, didn't get it, didn't get a compromise, and went right back to their desk and started working. Just, okay. And went back to work. Do not do that. I get it's nerve-wracking as hell to ask for a raise. But when you decide to ask for a raise, or if you're thinking about asking for a raise, you have to ask yourself, if I get a hard no, if there's no meat in the middle, if there's no compromise, if I just get a straight up no, am I willing to walk? That day, not 3 months from now, not 6 months from now. You can maybe wait till the weekend if you want like the couple extra days to fill out that paycheck. But if you're not willing to immediately walk, don't ask for the raise. It's better to not ask for a raise than to ask for one, get turned down, and go back to work. And that's what they did. And they didn't just stay for another week. They stayed for months. I'm like, what are you doing? You're never going to get a raise at this company. You came to them with the proposition, with the idea that you were worth more. They said no. And you're just like, okay. Went right back to work. And they actually fought me on this. They're like, well, it's not that easy. You can't just... I'm like, what are you talking about? You have no negotiating power ever in this company. You just showed them your hand. I will come with a case. I will say I'm worth more. You say no. And I don't even believe in myself. I don't believe in myself enough to say, I'm sorry you feel that way. It's been great. Bye. You went right back to your desk and started working. Why would they ever give you a raise? Why would they give you a bonus? Why would they give you a performance bonus? They might, like I mentioned, they might give you that inflationary raise that everybody gets. At the end of the year, oh, it's been 365 days. Here's your extra rounding error on your paycheck. But if you're expecting some significant bonus at the end of the year based on performance, if you expect in 6 months to go back when you really have a solid case to get a raise, it's not happening. Even if you kicked ass, you might have been the highest performing member on the team. You save them tons of money, but they're like, why are we going to waste money giving this person a performance bonus when 3 months ago they asked for a raise, we said no, and they just went back to work? You have no leverage. You have no negotiating power. They will never respect you. They will milk you for every ounce of work they can get out of you. And he somehow thought that I was wrong. He didn't have the balls to walk out. Say, no, you're wrong. If you aren't in a position to do that, just don't ask for a raise. Start looking for other work. Let that be your raise. Start sending out your resume to other companies. Do that. Don't ask for a raise, get turned down, and just go back to work. You're not going to get the performance bonus. You're not going to get a raise even if you come back. You would have, I can't think of a scenario where you get turned down, you go back to your desk and you start working again, and then you come back in 6 months, even if you had a lot of shit to show them. You're like, hey, I've saved you this much money. I've done this. I've done that. Internally, they're like, you stuck around last time. Why would we give it to you this time? Then they're going to tell you no again. And for all you know, they might have been playing games with you. Depending on how much of a dick your manager is or how much of a dick the company is, that initial no might have just been them trying to see, what is this person going to do? How much do they believe in themselves? How attached are they to this idea that they deserve a raise? Because knowing this person, knowing his personality type, when they told him no, he didn't counter and like try to keep the discussion going. He probably just was like, okay. Sulked back to his desk. Again, I tried to coach him. I tried to help him out with this. But he didn't really believe. So sad. And I wasn't too hard on the guy, but I was just like, look, you messed up. You went back to work. I was like, you could still leave. It's not too late. I mean, you asked for your raise yesterday. You're telling me about it now. Like, you could still leave. But I was like, just know, like, you're never going to get a raise. He's like, you don't know that. I'm like, yes, I do. I actually do. You didn't get it. And you just went back to your desk. Of course I know. Put yourself in their shoes. Imagine you're the employer of a company. Somebody comes to you and they're like, hey, I deserve more. You're like, no, you don't. You're like, no, I mean, you're an okay employee, but you're not like an all-star. If you left tomorrow, like, yeah, I'd have to find somebody to replace you, but it's not the end of the world. They ask for a raise and you're like, nope. And they go right back to work. Would you ever voluntarily pay that person more? No. Never. It would never happen. But if that employee that like, you're like, man, I stumbled upon greatness here. If they left tomorrow, fuck, I'd be so screwed. If they left, or if they came to you and asked for a raise, you'd be like, oh, man, this person might leave. They just made their whole case. They know the position they're in. I got to pay this person. You have to put yourself in their shoes and really think about what it's like to be in their situation. So yeah, that person, they didn't double their salary, but they did double the raise from what they were going to initially asked for. Another success story. They were so happy. I was so happy. I think they were more nervous than I was. I was like, look, if everything you told me is true, you got this. They're giving you this raise. You have nothing to worry about. Unless the finances behind the scenes are just totally fucked, you got this. They were freaking out. Told them, good luck on the call. Just go in with confidence. Go in there knowing who you are, what you bring to the table, and be ready to walk if you don't get it. They went in, asked for twice the amount they were initially going to ask for, and they got it. They got it. I love it. I love it. Makes me so happy to see people go outside of their comfort zone, do something they're not comfortable doing, and get it done. And actually listen to the advice I gave them. Not saying they have to listen to everything, but I'm sure you know some of those people in life where they come to you for advice, you give them advice, and they listen to none of it. Because they weren't really coming to you for advice. They were just coming to you hoping that you would tell them what was already in their head, what they wanted to hear. Those people. But sometimes people come to you for advice and they're actually looking for advice. And when they listen to it and follow through with it and get positive results, like a badass raise, it's like, dude, you killed it. So yeah. That's my rant on when and how to negotiate a raise. If you've done this yourself and you've been successful, leave a comment below. If there are other times that you think I missed, that you think are very crucial moments in time to really consider asking for a raise, leave a comment below. Let me know what you think. But like I said, I was just going through thinking about my own career, some careers of other people I've helped. And those are the two times where I really think you're just in a prime position to ask for a raise, make a strong case, and get it. So yeah. Like I mentioned before I end this, if you got, whoa, didn't mean to show that. If you guys, somebody's gonna go back and like pause it. What's in his notes? If you guys go to my channel, check out my newest video, Becoming Neo, the Next Revolution. Like I said, this is probably the video I'm most proud of, second most being the future of education. These two are, I'm just very happy with how they turned out, and I think they're some of the most important things I've talked about on this channel. So if you guys want to check those out, I will link to them in chat. And once again, if you guys want to support the channel in any way, all I ask is that you like this video that you're watching right now and subscribe to the channel. That helps me out more than anything. Greatly appreciated. I will be, next Sunday, October 3rd, I will be live as usual. So October 3rd, 2 p.m. Eastern, I'll be back on this channel live to talk about whatever else comes to my mind during the next week of my life. You guys are awesome. I will see you next week.